Presented here for your consideration, the notion that the ordinary people surrounding you every day, on the street, the bus, at the post office, or the trendy evening venue, are, in fact, far from ordinary. That these men, women, and others form their own splinter groups behind closed doors, and that these micro-societies engage in activities often more obscure than fiction. Welcome to the Sub-Subculture.
Yes, welcome, and thank you for joining us on the Sub-Subculture Podcast. I am supermarket own brand human and your host, Andrew.
And I'm recently debunked charlatan Joe.
Wow, straight in with the charlatans. Well, very on topic. Load up the rectum with crystals and turn your EVP meters to 11 because we are delving into the fascinating world of ghost hunters today.
I can't wait. This has been so much fun looking into it.
Yeah, and I do mean that. Sit on a crystal. It's for your own protection. I'm fired up. I'm jazzed on all cylinders for today.
It's ready to go.
I am. I love this stuff.
I can see him jamming more and more up there as we're talking.
Quartz, onyx, jade.
Can't be too safe.
That's it. So, ghost hunters, preconceptions. What did you think about this when you started looking into this as a topic?
I knew very little about this. I think this is something that you suggested, and you've got more of a grounding in than I have. So I'm keen to see where we go with it. But my preconceptions were really probably some combination of seeing YouTube videos here and there, or hammy MTV ghost hunting TV shows from my childhood age, and even the TV show Supernatural. They do a couple of episodes ripping on ghost faces.
Ghost faces! Yeah.
Exactly. Great TV show, by the way. So I don't think I had a particularly good view of this. It looked like hammy TV productions, and pretty much that was it. I thought, surely does anyone really genuinely believe in ghosts? It's pretty widely established that there's no scientific evidence. Well, or is there?
How dare you, sir?
But the common belief now, certainly in the West, is that ghosts aren't real.
Oh, really? Oh, really?
I'd say that's a mainstream belief, and I thought, I don't know, what kind of other people out there doing this genuinely? I didn't know. I didn't really have any idea. I suspected probably not.
I can tell you it's either The Independent or a CNN article, both of which I've got open here.
Oh, shit.
The stats, and this is in the last 4 years it was put out. So one was 2019, one was 2024, but they said, whichever one it was, that 50% of Americans believe in ghosts currently, of those surveyed. So that's nice.
I mean, are Americans people?
The biggest chunk of our audience.
Abort! That's more than I thought. But America is a more credulous place anyway. I think religion's higher over there. Okay, 50% is a lot higher than I thought.
I actually can't really give you an uninitiated preconception. As I mentioned, I love this stuff. I think it's incredibly fun. I have limited first-hand experience with it as well, and I've looked into this on and off over the years for my own entertainment and with a view of joining some kind of paranormal group in my local area. And I realize saying that now that I've opened myself up to mass ridicule on the internet, but you don't do this if you don't want to become hated.
I can't wait to start getting banned. We're probably doing something right when that happens. I was really surprised when you said that you'd done a bit of ghost hunting. I was stunned to know someone close to me that was into this, and I've got many questions for you as to what degree you got into it, why you got into it, do you believe, etc.
Oh, my experiences are basically limited to trying to find stuff on the internet and a group, and then failing, and then getting on with my life / drinking heavily. So, as I said, limited first-hand experiences. But coming back to what you mentioned around, do people even believe this? And your preconception is that it's just sort of hammy and not much of a thing. I think that most cultures do have a concept of an afterlife, right? Or some other plane of existence, or have stories about encountering these kind of entities by living humans. And this, as a topic, seems to be groups of people dedicated to trying to show or prove that. In fact, the Wikipedia entry for it is quite a nice little summary. Ghost hunting is the process of investigating locations that are purportedly haunted by ghosts. The practice is heavily criticized. It's considered a pseudoscience, exactly like you say. So it's a lot of widely debunked practices. But typically, a ghost hunting team will attempt to collect evidence supporting the existence of paranormal activity. They often refer to themselves as paranormal investigators, using a variety of electronic devices and other traditional techniques to seek things out.
One of my assumptions in this was that the whole thing would be about believing or not believing is kind of a central question to it, and proving the existence of ghosts was my underlying assumption, that what the whole thing would be about. But having done the research, I don't believe that anymore. And I think I've come to the conclusion that you can have a lot of enjoyment ghost hunting without actually rationally believing in ghosts, which is an interesting... I guess we'll explore how I came to that, or how we might have come to that conclusion as we go on. But yeah, my entire premise assumption was flawed, I think.
I don't know about flawed, but I think you could come down on either side of the fence on something like that. But we'll get into it, and I think wrapping up, we'll probably have similar conclusions, or we'll have some thoughts. But that's way down the line. I've got a whole lot of shit to throw at you first.
Oh yeah. So we've kind of defined what the ghost hunting subculture is like. Should we have a go at defining what a ghost is?
Nope.
Okay.
Nope, absolutely not.
Let's move on.
It's solid. We all know what a ghost is. If we're focusing in on the subculture of ghost hunters as well, or as a premise,
mm-hmm.
What do people do when they're ghost hunting, or how do they do it, and stuff I can talk about as well. If we're looking still at throwing some definitions down.
Hit me.
I said to you offline a minute ago, but I realized when I was starting this, I've filled like 2 pages of notes already before opening a single article. What am I doing with my brain space? What's wrong with me?
Been saving it all for ghost hunting.
That's it. I'm about to blow my proverbial load all over this podcast, and then I'll be done.
What have you jizzed down on that page?
It's a lot of ectoplasm, which I'll talk about as well.
That's what it is. Haunted notebook.
So these groups, what do they do? In the Western world, and the sort of non-televised approach, this is looking for the groups and paranormal clubs and societies I think there tends to be roughly 2 approaches when you go on a ghost hunt. And a lot of smaller groups in your local area that you can probably find online right now will have
hot ghost hunters near you, just waiting to take your EMF readings.
They will. What is an EMF reading? I will tell you in a bit. But these guys, they tend to hedge their bets between 2 kind of approaches. I think there's the ones that rely heavily on the technologies, which are things like night vision cameras, recording devices for sounds, heat sensors, electromagnetic sensors, types of lasers for detecting motion and movement. And there's this dedicated purpose-built tools now, electronically and otherwise, for ghost hunting.
They've even got apps.
Yes, there's also leading to the debunking of this, because everything's AI and everything's fake generated from an app now.
Including this podcast, but don't tell our listeners.
Yeah. Error 404 not found. But a quick search through UK suppliers, because I thought Joe's going to absolutely want to get into this himself after this. You need to know where to buy your stuff, mate.
Mm-hmm. Hit me.
So,
Temu.
How dare you? No. Professional specialist websites.
Oh, sorry, AliExpress.
Thank you. So you can find electronic kit ranging from roughly 20 quid, which will be some randomized light flashing devices, to spirit boxes, which randomly cycle through radio stations and channels. And that's to help you with EVF, which is electronic voice phenomena. And they range from around £100 plus. An EMF detector, so electromagnetic frequency, will set you back something like 40 quid. Or you can go full on and get something called an SLS camera, which stands for structured light sensor. And what it does is project an infrared light pattern onto its frame of view, and then analyzes the reflections it gets back to try and sort of show you a 3D model or stickman projection on the screen. And you can interpret that as paranormal activity. If you see a stick shadow in the screen that it just basically made up based on light patterns that may or not be there. And that can set you back like 500 quid for something like that.
I mean, you're never going to catch a ghost with a 20 quid bit of equipment, are you? If you're serious, you've got to invest the money.
I don't know. I think some of my ectoplasm in a jar, ready with the screw top lid. I'm going to get one. I'm going to get me a horny ghost.
How much does a mystery machine set you back? If there's not a van involved, then you're a casual, in my opinion.
Yeah, and how much for the smoke that comes out the back of the mystery machine when they open it?
Could have loaded in that vegetable oil.
So the other side of this, so leaning away from the technology, is people that have a more spiritual aspect or approach to it. And these are predominantly people that claim that they are sensitive to these kind of things. And it tends to have a kind of Judeo-Christian basis, a lot of those beliefs and things, although heavily on the, I guess, slightly pagan beliefs as well, because the church are quite anti-demonic possessions and ghosts and things like that. There's heaven and there's hell.
Yeah, they don't like you believing the wrong kind of law.
Only certain people are allowed to conduct certain things, according to the church.
Gatekeepers.
This often means that there's at least, when I said they're hedging their bets, they usually have at least one of these in a rounded group. And they'll do things like conduct a blessing or a visualization for the group at the start of a ghost hunt.
A visualization? Like a PowerPoint?
Everyone, close your eyes, stand in a circle, maybe even hold hands. Picture a radiant white light showering down on you. It's not just Andy's ectoplasm.
This sounds like a yoga retreat.
There's similarities, yeah. It's more about cleansing yourself and your own aura and protecting the group from any unwanted entities. They'll do things like state their intentions to whatever might be listening.
What if the unwanted entity is part of the group and it's called
Sleazy
Andrew?
Dave. I'm the unwanted entity in most groups I'm in. Ain't no blessing keeping me out.
Don't banish me!
Yeah. They'll be the ones that will do things like burning bundles of sage as well.
Mm-hmm.
You can actually... I was on holiday recently and found a shop that was selling bundles of sage ready for burning, and that was the first time I'd seen them. I was like,
smudging, I believe it's called.
You are correct, sir. And that's to cleanse an aura or negative energies from a space.
So does this come from pagan beliefs and sort of those kind of ceremonies? That's kind
Stuff
of
like that certainly does. It's
mishmashed in.
Yep. Mashing of belief systems, desperately hoping that you can make something work.
So that's the kind of spiritual side, and then it's blended with the technological side.
Yep. And the angle that you have for having someone like that in your group is, like I said, hedging your bets and to protect your group from feeling like this at home, basically. It's all very well to get creeped out in a spooky shack in the middle of the woods or an old insane asylum, and everyone likes a bit of a jump scare that goes in these things, I think. But don't nobody want that in their own home? So the idea behind this is if you have these practices, you feel like you're leaving it behind at the end of the hunt and nothing's going to follow you home, except maybe Creepy Dave in the group.
In the mystery machine, as he calls it.
Yeah. He's going to find out what's under your disguise, that's for sure.
Oh, God, it was those pesky kids all along.
That whole basically furious monologue, that's my 2 pages of stuff that was already in my brain. Please help me. Purge me.
So there's usually at least one person that performs the spiritual side of the ghost hunt, or at least the sort of protection and ending of it. And are they doing it in an earnest way, or is it sort of something that you can take turns in? Do you have to believe you have a particular gift, one foot in the other world, or something like that, or is it something anyone could do?
I guess that would entirely depend on who you talk to and what their belief structure is.
What do you believe?
What do I believe? That changes depending on the day and how many drinks I've had. I think there's something to it, and it's all about people's personal experiences when they go to something like this. I don't know if I can really pin down what my belief is. I think there is stuff unseen or unknown in this world, and supernatural or paranormal, you could just say it's stuff that we can't explain with science yet. Maybe there's a reason it's sage in particular people burn. Maybe there's some kind of particle or scientific phenomenon that is actually repelled by sage smoke in the same way that a magnet would push away pieces of metal. Who knows? Maybe that's the explanation for people feeling like the spirits have gone once they've done it or something like this. I don't know. I think there's a lot of fun in checking out what goes bump in the night, though. And if you spend X number of hours with the lights off in a location that's sort of decaying, run down, you've heard stories about it being haunted and a bunch of murders having taken place there, you're going to get a creepy feeling. So it's a bit of fun, right?
That's something I really like about this, or something that it's important to remember is I'm a scientist by trade, and I live in the West, and we've pretty much eradicated most traces of spiritualism from our life, which I don't think is sort of spirituality, which I don't think is a good thing necessarily. But it's very easy for me to be skeptical in my comfortable armchair at 11 in the morning on a sunny Oxford day. I'd be like, oh, this ghost stuff's nonsense. You'd never catch me believing in things going bump in the night. I'm a rational man of science. But take me out to somewhere remote that I don't know, maybe alone, or make it cold, scare me a little bit with something, a noise I can't explain, and suddenly all that rationality, it begins to seem a little bit less valuable when it starts engaging stuff that's primal in your brain. Fear is pretty primal, and we had fear long before we had science. And I guess I'm just trying to say that if you take away the trappings of your safe modern life, then quite soon you begin to feel a bit more animalistic again, and then it's much easier to see how you might start believing in stuff, even if you previously didn't, 6 hours earlier.
Yep. You've touched on something that I found as well, that one of the articles I was reading was talking about maybe why do people enjoy ghost hunting. And it was this concept of the science of fear, which there have been books on. And in my let's skip over it and skim read everything very, very basic terms, as humans, we can kind of come to enjoy the adrenaline hit of perceived risk and triggering a fight or flight response from our brain chemicals, which is the actual science you're talking about, right? We literally release serotonin when we feel safe and secure again after that, and or dopamine as kind of a reward for getting to that safety or for having overcome something that you've faced, maybe a scenario that you were uncomfortable with. So there's some justification there on maybe why people keep going back to it.
I mean, this is why horror films and scary games exist, right? In theory, on paper, we ought to not like this. It's scary, we're scared. Why would you want to be involved in that? But playing with fear in a controlled environment, which you can turn off when you finally had enough, and as you say, have that serotonin hit of, I survived some danger, it's popular. So ghost hunting is just maybe another way to feel some feelings.
Yep. There was a crossover, what they were talking about in this science of fear, that horror movies were exactly the example they were giving. And even though you're kind of safe in your own environment, there's sort of an adrenaline rush of when you're watching it and you're kind of invested in the scenario or the situation you find yourself in. That's also, people enjoy that, like an adrenaline rush for doing stuff will also happen when you're out ghost hunting, should you feel creepy or threatened in some way.
I think also when you're out at night in a low light environment and your vision's not as accurate as it was, and you can start seeing patterns or something in the darkness, and our brains are attuned to look for predators and pattern recognition. And it's, from an evolutionary point of view, it's much better to think there's a predator when there isn't, and take action accordingly, because at least you're alive at the end of it, than be like, it's probably fine, and then get eaten by a saber-toothed tiger. So we're attuned to look for threats, and I think that primal part of us comes alive, and it's fun to play with that.
I think fun is the right term for that, and that's maybe why people are doing it outside of the sensationalized TV shows that might be how people have seen ghost hunting and written it off in their minds, a bit like you mentioned. So there's a lot of these very sensationalized for TV shows. Ghost Hunters as a show name started in 2004. Ghost Adventure started in 2008. Most Haunted UK, which you might have seen on like Living TV or replayed constantly on Dave at night or something like that, ran from like 2002 to 2010, and then did some live specials and stuff like that.
These shows were popular.
Yeah, and that's just naming a few of the ones that were around on mainstream or cable TV channels. And then what's kind of happened now, you've alluded to as well, is that it's moved, or it's not been supplanted by, but it also exists on YouTube, where it becomes much more accessible for people to do it themselves and maybe farm it for likes and clicks, and the reason that anyone does anything on YouTube, apparently.
You don't need a TV studio anymore to make a convincing or compelling ghost show. You don't even need a TV studio to make effects. If you want to add in a little bit of flavor, a little bit of encouragement, it can all be done at home with not at home, but a camera and a bit of video editing software or an AI to do something. So I'm
Yeah.
not surprised TV shows are less common and YouTube is more common. YouTube channels are popular now as well.
I can't stand that. But, I still like to listen to the talkies.
The talkies.
The moving pictures, yeah, as long as you've got a floppy-haired tween, a clickbaity title, and them running around Blair Witch style with a handy cam screaming at nothing, then apparently that's enough.
That's good enough. Yeah, the important thing is to make sure your camera is always in night vision mode, no matter whether you can see with normal light or not, and have it pointed at your own face most of the time.
I did watch a few clips of these, and it was 10, 11 o'clock at night, but it didn't make me feel scared so much as scared for the human race as a, as a species. Some guys called Sam and Colby seem to be particularly popular, and they've been doing their investigations. They've got a whole load of the electronic kit, which is also quite easy to debunk. I don't really go in for the tech side of it so much, or I don't really go in for any side of it really, apart from the experience of being there yourself.
Mm-hmm.
It's the strongest thing I can say would trigger me to actually believe it. There's also channels called Twin Paranormal, Huff Paranormal, and about a billion others that I found. But largely it's small groups of people meeting up in a specific place that they've heard about that are haunted and conducting their investigations and splicing in bits of the history of the place they've heard or read about, which is particularly sensationalized. So, in this particular room, it's estimated that approximately 3 billion people died of tuberculosis here. That's right.
The Great Coughing Plague of 1850.
That was actually one that I watched them doing, had been a psych ward and a tuberculosis hospital at times.
Oh,
and it was
double whammy.
Absolutely trashed. It had a load of, leftover clothes and children's dolls and everything, where it looked like the place had actually just been evacuated on a day and everything was left behind.
That's cool. I do love abandoned places, derelict places. There's something really fascinating about them. I've always liked that, but totally without needing there to be supernatural things involved. There's just something cool about them.
That's crossing over into like urbexing, right? Urban exploring.
Yeah, definitely.
Get into dilapidated places. I think they point it out in that show, or if not, it's just painfully obvious and jumped into my brain, is that not only has it been abandoned, but it's also completely unlocked. So you're just going to have a bunch of homeless people and junkies that are making the place look even more terrifying and shit.
It must be quite difficult to find a place like that that's genuinely abandoned, but also still accessible. Or maybe you just got to be willing to break a few rules, because a lot of these places are fenced off, barbed wire, and all that kind of stuff. So if you go along with some wire cutters and get in, I guess nothing can stop you. But tricky to find those places. Certainly in the UK, it's hard to know where abandoned places are. There's not many, I don't think.
I think there's maybe more than you think, which is why urbexing is even a thing. But I want to get onto that as some of the darker side of it, if it exists in ghost hunting. But some of them are like protected heritage sites. I think the one that they went to that had been a prison and a psych ward and a hospital and so on, is usually publicly run as a museum, at least partly. And this was in Australia. I think they were even doing one, even though they're a pair of American kids. So they've done pretty well for themselves in terms of traveling to locations. A lot of heritage sites, and you can do this in the centre of Edinburgh as well. They'll have ghost tours, ghost walks, because it's quite a good thing, or it's easy to cash in on as well. Do it in the dark. It's a safe and controlled environment in those cases, because they are gated and locked up at night with a staff, so that someone's not going to fall down a rusty pit and sue you.
You've touched on a couple of things there. So I found there are maybe 3 flavours of YouTuber. There was one who is the typical arsehole YouTuber / TikToker that has bright red text on their video thumbnails and extreme reactions to stuff. And they're basically vile humans doing attention grabby stuff. Like, I stayed in the most haunted place ever. And it seems like they've got no real respect for the scene of ghost hunting, really. They're just kind of cashing in as just another thing they can get some clicks for. And often it seems like they've got no real respect for the dead. They're sometimes in places where if people have died there, they're not really conducting themselves in a very respectful way. Whether you think that matters or not, I'm not sure. I feel like it matters, but I feel it just kind of tells you about their whole attitude towards the things, towards the environment. And second flavour of YouTuber is the genuine one who approaches things methodically. There's cameras set up and there's kind of quite a thoughtful kind of tone of voice in their videos. And the third flavour, which kind of confused me to start with, is the sort of ironic YouTuber where it looks a bit like the the genuine one, they've got the cameras, they go to places, they've got all the gear, and they normally are looking for ghosts and things like that. But the way they talk about it is completely humorous, also probably disrespectful for a place that was, if it was, people really did die there. And it's kind of more like entertainment. So these guys, they're called, it's a Ghost Files series on a channel called Watcher, which has got 3 million subscribers, so very popular. Ryan and Shane. And so they kind of have this creepy background music, yet they're just cracking jokes the entire time. And it doesn't, one of them is allegedly believer and the other's allegedly the skeptic. But the whole thing was just kind of I couldn't tell if it was meant to be genuine or ironic to start with. And eventually I concluded probably ironic. But it doesn't seem to matter to the viewership. They just like watching these guys crack jokes and have fun together. The sort of occasional thrill of a real, quote, real bump sound or discuss.
That does seem like a tonal shift when it comes to YouTube formats versus something like Most Haunted Live. The TV shows that have got high production values, they're more appealing to trying to show that we really did find something, or this is genuine. Maybe that's what keeps or kept people more interested at the time. And the YouTube channels really are almost, I want to see these two clowns get scared of something, even in the ones that are genuinely conducting their investigations, or the ones that, like you say, are just making snide remarks the whole time as they go through it. It's not trying to be serious, I think, in either case.
Can you imagine two clowns making snide remarks? That's not an entertainment platform.
Yeah, who would watch or listen to that?
You'd have to be dumb.
Smash that like button! Just realised I'm screaming to myself in an empty room. It's a ghost!
Going back as well to what you said about ghost tours around Edinburgh and those things, they're really fun. I think I've done one or two of those. One comment I found on Reddit, which was quite funny, by user Booty McButtcheeks, shows out to you.
Well done, Booty McButtcheeks. Just your name has amused me.
Yep, classic Reddit name. Their post was how to find haunted places to investigate that aren't $200. And I think that sums up a area of this where if you're paying $200 to go stay in a packaged hotel, ghost experience, blah, 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 maybe you're doing the ghost hunting thing wrong. Fine if you view it as entertainment, but since the beginning of ghost hunting, there's been a long history of people drawing money out of it, and as well as fakery and other exploitation. It's kind of intimately entwined with genuine investigation.
I wrote that down as well. So this is where we're talking about charlatans. Basically, as long as there's been any interest in the supernatural or the paranormal or life after death, which is something that is inherently nearly impossible to categorically prove, there have been con men and women that are willing to string people along for money or keep it going as much as they can. And I don't think that I would say that ghost tours and ghost walks are necessarily as bad as that. It's maybe helping people with a genuine interest, but you're right, there's definitely always been that side to it. And if we want to do a small segue into, you asked about personal experiences with this, that's one of the ones that I had or did. So my good lady wife used to work in a hotel which allegedly had particularly haunted rooms. That's not something they sold that people could come and stay there. It was just like, if you were in the know or in the local area, there was like, oh yeah, we've had several guests over the years have reported that this particular room, they've seen a man standing at the foot of the bed, or maybe it was a woman. One of these kind of things.
Definitely not the hotel receptionist.
Yeah, let's put the manual locks on the door for this one. But I think it was like a New Year's, and I came in and helped out actually working there. And then Katerina said, yeah, we can actually stay in that room. That's one of the ones that's available. So, I got paid for my time there, but I also got to do an investigation at the same time. Although I was absolutely fucking knackered after having done some work, so I was just happy to go and sleep somewhere. But it did make me wanted to see if you can't really recreate these things on command. But I woke up every hour in the night just to see, like, would I notice something? And it wasn't like, oh, I was waking up because I was scared. I was making myself wake up with like a silent alarm on the fitness watch kind of thing that you can do.
Mm-hmm.
And then a couple of times I poked my head out into the hallway because it was supposed to be one of these things had been seen in the hallway as well. Absolutely disappointed. Nothing.
It was just Dave jerking off, making a bit of ectoplasm.
Firing it down the halls like the jizz flinger at the start of Silence of the Lambs.
Shouldn't you be on the desk, Dave?
You certainly shouldn't be at the foot of my bed again. It was interesting, and if you put yourself into that frame of mind, you want to see something or you're inclined to see something, I think that's where the fun comes in ghost hunting as a genre, as a subculture. But wholly, it was disappointing. And that's where the charlatans can come in and fill the gap, because if you can tell people you are definitely going to show them something and at least 50% of them believe it, then your reputation gets better and people believe it more.
So the Victorians leaned into spiritualism and seances and ghost hunting in a big way, sort of a combination of importing spiritualism from the US combined with their high death rate, combined with the dawn of science. So just enough technology to start measuring these things. They were kind of at the perfect intersection of old beliefs and new technology to go into this in a huge way.
This, I think, is some of the why we have ghost hunting now. And there's two aspects of it, almost two iterations. I think you've hit the nail on the head with the origins of spiritualism, which was a movement kind of in the US from about the 1840s onwards, where people were doing these seances and using tools like speaking boards or turning tables, which is kind of like a full-size table of a Ouija board that you would rotate, or the dial would rotate and would be able to spell out messages. Or there's table tapping, which people would all get into a spooky feeling room with candles lit and wait for knocks and things on the tables from the other side to communicate with the dead.
From the other side of the table.
From the other side
knee banging
of the floorboards. And a lot of this relied on that belief, or at least the suspension of disbelief in a life after death. And as you said, just rampant death rates, or the prevalence of death everywhere, even in funeral rites where people would be laid out in a living room to sit there for 3 days for accurate mourning, enough time for mourning, really meant that people were quite focused on death in their daily lives. It opens a door for this kind of stuff, right?
Definitely.
Following that, you've got this phase of ghost photography as well, which
that's perfect. Yeah.
It really kicks off this kind of stuff where we've now got people wanting to use infrared cameras and night vision and stuff. But ghost photography was kind of them being able to say, oh, look, we've got practical, tangible
evidence.
Proof. Yep.
That's exactly it. It's a technology that's available suddenly where you can show evidence to other people. And also you can fake it, which as soon as the camera was made, people were making fake photos as well. But it's that first fairly commonly available tool where instead of just word of mouth, which you might be inclined to disbelieve a little bit, you've got some kind of hard proof as they sold it to show other people, look, this really happened.
Yep. And that was, so following the sort of spiritualism, this was 1850s to 1870s when it came, 1870s it made its way across to the UK. But the 1850s, ghost photography was a thing there. This is, sort of post-American Civil War. Again,
a lot of death.
Influx of death and people feeling that loss of a family member. The last thing I've got of him was this picture, and someone will go, oh, we can do something with this. It was when you had photographs being taken on plates, so you could double plate things and double expose your images, which is laying one thing over another. And those were all, by about the 1920s, largely debunked. And even the likes of Harry Houdini, famed illusionist and escapist, was on the side of this is all nonsense and not real. And here's how they're doing it.
There's a really interesting clash I found there. You've got Houdini on the one hand, the trickster, who you might well believe would be in his interests to promote, oh no, spiritualism is real, seances are real, mediums are real, and all this kind of stuff. But he was on the side of rationalism, saying, these guys claiming to be real are all frauds, this is how it's done, these are the tricks, trust me, I know, because I'm a magician / escape artist / trickster / cold reader myself. And on the other side of this debate at the time, I'm sure there were many people, but Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, creator of Sherlock Holmes, the most rational, skeptical man in fictional history, Conan Doyle himself was a fervent believer in a spiritual afterlife, in spiritualism, in ghost hunting. And these two sort of came at it from kind of opposite sides and clashed very publicly about it.
opposite sides of each other's beliefs and opposite sides to where you think they would land as well. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, that was quite amazing.
I think that after this, we've mentioned it jokingly a few times, but that the phenomenon of ectoplasm started with ghost photography and seances. So did you get a nice, juicy description of what ectoplasm actually is? Or is it from Ghostbusters, the movie, that you've seen this concept?
Probably from Ghostbusters, the movie. My idea of the concept is the ghosts can only become physical in our world for a period of time, maybe dependent on the strength of the ghost or the anger of its emotions, strength of its emotions. And when it unmanifests physically, the ectoplasm is left over as a temporary residue from the spirit world, which dissipates.
If only any of that were true.
Is my description wrong?
It can be whatever you want it to be. That's ghost hunting, baby. It's right if you believe it.
All right, correct me, nerd.
There's no corrections to be had. It can be.
I can't be
It can
wrong.
be schism if you want. So it makes me want to say it in an overly racist Italian accent. Ectoplasm, or the phantasm with the ectoplasm spraying around in my room. Is that good? Is that racist? I hope so.
It wasn't until you said it was.
So this was a phrase that was termed. Good English. A phrase that was coined in the 1890s, 1894, according to Wikipedia.
Boom.
And this was the idea that spiritual mediums could produce or induce a physical manifestation of an otherworldly entity, like a ghost or possibly something else. It would be a semi-liquid or gassy substance that could come out of some orifice of the spiritualist and would be seen as proof there was something there. It would be like a floating cloth-like structure in the air that would manifest for everyone to see. And some of the pictures of this ghost photography / ectoplasm phenomenon are quite fascinating if you can even bring yourself to believe it for half a second, because you've got someone with this weird gassy substance or liquid seemingly coming out of them inadvertently or against their will.
Where does it come out of?
Ears, nose, mouth.
Oh, not the usual.
So some of them, you can find this, some of them were hiding things in their rectum.
A time-honored tradition of any con man.
Basically, all of it disproven. You know, people were putting things like cheesecloth with a rubber glove on it and just regurgitating it. It was pretty disgusting.
The lengths people went to make a convincing trick, quite astonishing. I think we've lost this art. So mediums back in the Victorian era, the whole movement kind of centered around them. They were the people that claimed to have one foot in the other world, or could see things or commune with spirits. And they were the kind of the priests of this movement, the gateway to slightly spooky things happening. And seances were all the rage. Even Queen Victoria partook in them. They were considered totally acceptable in high society circles. It's another form of entertainment or theatre, but people kind of tended to believe in them, I think, or were much. There was not the same degree of skepticism we have now. And something I think is amazing is the skill and the fakery that these mediums employed was astonishing. And I don't think we have an equivalent of that anymore. I think in the modern world, the social climate's changed quite a lot. So we're a lot more skeptical now, demand a lot more proof, and there's a long history of things being debunked. And that medium persona is kind of split. On the one hand, you've now got psychics who make a huge amount of money, apparently. The psychic industry is alive and thriving, especially in America. Apparently you can get them done remotely by email. That's fun. But anyway, they're the ones that still claim a genuine spookiness, otherworldliness, genuine powers. And on the other side, we've still got magicians who have all the tricks and the cold reading. I'm sure psychics do that as well. But these guys don't claim to be supernatural in any way. And I think it would be pretty unacceptable for a professional magician to claim genuine psychic status. I think Uri Geller was probably the last person that did that, and he's kind of a laughingstock. So that medium persona is being split into these two other ones which we have in the modern world now, neither of which seem to have much impact on modern ghost hunting.
I don't know. I think there is still the space for the medium in entertainment. So the sensationalized shows I mentioned before, and the ones that you can see getting openly mocked on South Park as well, where they do a guy that claims to be a medium will get a big crowd of people there and start just calling out things like, "Oh, I'm getting something from the other side. I'm getting an ancestor with a B in their name. And then, of course, someone goes, "Oh, yeah, that's my Aunt Beatrice. I knew she was calling me. I knew she was coming." They're just ready to accept anything this person says because they're desperate and
They want to believe.
lonely, yeah. Fox Mulder style. But things like Most Haunted, I think it was that one, had this guy called Derek Acor, who was pretty big in the haunted TV show scene in the UK for quite a while. And there would always be him on these investigations, and it would be like, "Oh, I'm definitely getting a feeling of something here. Oh, it's attacking me. I'm getting a headache. Oh, I've got such a pain in my temple." You know, they're still there. They're still doing their thing.
Oh, okay.
They're jumping in.
They don't have the same credibility that they used to, I think.
I think even by the 20s, you know, post-Victorian era, things like ectoplasm and mediums were largely debunked or ridiculed, or not necessarily everyone accepted it as real.
Yeah.
And things like, okay, we know it's regurgitated cheesecloth, or this person was doing it using newspaper clippings to make a face in a mushed up sort of paper mache, which she then expelled through her ear.
How the fuck did you do that?
I don't know.
I've never expelled anything from my ear. I don't have muscles in it. You've got to train your ear sphincters.
I don't know. I don't know what you managed to do, but you can find those pictures. They're hilarious in our modern understanding. I was going to try and get a clip from some of these ghost hunter YouTube shows now to see how far we've come from the Victorian medium era of people, especially the ones in the last few years where it is two basically twinks running around pissing on each other or something. So I just can't. It's annoying, people talking over each other and jumping at any noise.
Yeah.
And we're already filling 50% of that quota, so why do we need someone else to do it for us?
The same kind of people that were into it in the Victorian era, they still exist. It hasn't really changed. There's people that don't believe at all, who are just cynical charlatans pretending that there's something going on in order to make money out of it, like psychics. And there's a kind of, there are the genuine believers at the other end of the scale who are trying to investigate with something approaching scientific methods and a sort of systematic approach. And there's kind of people in the middle who enjoy the history of it. And
there's an article from, maybe it was the same one you found, Haunt Scout, that said why you should consider taking up ghost hunting as a hobby. And that was from just September last year, 2024. And they touched on exactly that. Even if it's just getting out and going for a walk in the forest, somewhere spooky, that's going to be good for you. You can approach it with an air of skepticism if you want, but it also maybe will give people or a reason to employ the analytical and researching side of their brains in this hobby, because in order to say something is haunted or not, you need to do a bit of reading about it and why would it be haunted. So maybe it will help people do a bit of local history digging. I
think so. So these kind of analogous people from the past to now, you've got the performers who supply the phenomenon and the spectacle. So in the Victorian era, they had stage mediums, parlour mediums, spirit photographers, and that kind of thing. In the modern world, we've got TV ghost hunters and YouTube paranormal streamers. We've got another type, the believers, financially and socially sustaining the movement. In the Victorian world, it was wealthy patrons funding seances and middle-class families booking private sittings. Now we've got fans who watch live streams, pay for readings, book ghost tours, etc. There are the genuine investigators who seek to test the claims. So in the Victorian era, there were members of the Society for Psychical Research, the SPR, which is an interesting thing we should talk about more. Amateur gentleman scientists. That's what I'd like to be, a gentleman scientist.
You need to be a gentleman for that.
And a scientist.
You absolute fucking brute.
I got struck off. My research was too controversial. The establishment was afraid of me. Maverick scientist is a title I would like as well. But anyway, modern parallel of that, skeptical investigators and sort of debunk channels. There's exploiters who monetize the belief. In the Victorian era, there were fraudulent mediums, i.e. mediums, exploiting people's grief. And in the modern world, we've got pay-to-play haunted locations. So you go to a hotel, pay your $200, and then your local guide/medium takes you through. And there might even be some electronic trickery to be more convincing, which is quite fun. But potentially, depending on how much belief you have going in, you could feel misled. And then there's also sort of public figure endorsement and popular press. So celebrities like Conan Doyle in the Victorian era and in the modern era, I don't know which modern people claim to believe in ghosts. But there's the kind of the people that are involved in this scene, ranging from don't believe at all, but happy to string other people along, down to genuine believers or want to be believers, and everything in between. It's the same in the Victorian era. It's the same now. That kind of thrill, they still exist.
David Bowie was a big believer in the supernatural and stuff, but then he was off his face on cocaine and peppers and milk for 2 years straight. And he had this, but he believed that there was the face of a demon in the bottom of his swimming pool at some point in his life.
What a celebrity problem. That's very niche. I can't come up much.
I think, unfortunately, COVID has killed off some of the amateur and smaller groups that were around in everyone's local neighborhood. Who are you going to call? Those fucking guys.
Those nerds.
Yep. Because it seems like I was getting fewer hits when I was actually looking for one. I was looking in your area in particular. I was like, who can I send you out to go and get?
That would be fun.
There's less active communities, maybe in person, because of meeting up was banned for a while.
I'm not sure I'd want to do this with strangers.
Okay, I'll take that. But the active communities, I think they have shifted online. There's the YouTube channels. And then, of course, our good friend Reddit on our ghost hunting.
Yeah, been there.
Alive and well. But where you've mentioned charlatans and mock psychics and people exploiting the hobby or the people's beliefs for money, that comes into, I think, when I was looking for a negative or a darker side of this scene, that's mostly what it ended up being, is the fact that some of the practices themselves are sketchy. So breaking into locations that you're not supposed to be, not so great if you're basically encouraged to do it. You're not encouraged to do it by a ghost hunting community. I think everyone outwardly says you should be safe and follow the rules and things like that.
But it's also pretty much required.
Some of it, yeah. And then there's the ones that are just taking people for a ride. Like I'll do your reading if you give me all this money, and you can definitely speak to your dead Uncle Bob and that kind of stuff.
Bob, you still owe me that $5, you prick.
Where did you bury it? Poor practices, disturbing the peace of cemeteries and just being generally disrespectful, you've mentioned already. That's quite a negative side to this. And by looking at it without a critical eye, you're kind of endorsing a pseudoscience and the financial exploitation of these people, unless you really can. I'm not saying you need to shut everything down and believe in nothing, but you should always be applying a healthy dose of skepticism to anything in this world. It's not just fake medium photos. AI is making us see pictures of President Trump licking a wall in Israel. Is one I saw this week, but
that happened.
You don't even need it to be double exposure, dodgy photos. People are generating shit in real time.
If you ever could believe anything you saw previously, which is debatable, you certainly can't now.
One of the interesting things I found again about this negative side and how not easy it is to debunk, but how you shouldn't basically buy into any of the stuff that's on these TV channels, was from The Independent, who was interviewing some guy called Mustafa Golari.
Some guy called Dave the Receptionist. Renowned ectoplasm producer.
I've been just on people's feet for years.
They ain't caught me yet.
That was the article that said more than 50% of Americans believe ghosts are real, with a link out to the stats on that. And it talked about some of the tech that they use and how this guy has been involved in some of the shows. What did he say? Ghost Hunters and Haunted Discoveries he's worked on as an investigator or a producer. And they've got things like the REM pod or REM pod, which is like a small device with lights and sound emitters that you would put down a hallway, and in theory this thing reacts to movement around it. So you ask a bunch of open questions. Is there something in the room right now? And this thing might beep or go off, and people are taking that as solid proof that there was something over there in that hallway.
It's funny how often the resume or job title of paranormal investigator and TV producer seem to come up together. God, that's really interesting. Wonder why that is.
But all these things, especially the electronic ones, so EVP, the electronic voice phenomena, where it's just cycling through radio stations.
Is that a spirit box?
Yes.
I got that confused with the smother box to begin with, which is quite a different tool.
One of them tweaks your interest, but not the other. Leave it up to the listeners to decide which.
Listeners, you decide.
Yeah, these things, all of them are sensitive to cell phone signals, any kind of walkie-talkie radio interference.
It's perfect. The spirit box, doesn't it? It cycles between, like, just through radio channels. So you're going to get snippets of words, and occasionally they're going to line up. And if you want to believe, you can create a story out of it where humans are narrative-making machines. We have to make stories out of everything. Otherwise, we can't make sense of the world. And the EMF reader, just like you said, it senses electronic interference, like radiation wavelengths. So,
electromagnetic frequencies, yeah.
And our world is absolutely brimming with these now.
We're all strapped into them 100% of the time.
Yeah, satellite signal, GPS, Wi-Fi, exactly. It's in your own fucking pocket. This stuff's coming. Of course, you'll find, like, as long as the electronic box does something, as long as you can be confident it will beep at some point due to something, that's good enough. You can work with that if you want to.
These REM pods, REM pods, are particularly sensitive to radio frequencies. And what are these people that are on camera crews or talking to each other across multiple locations doing? Constantly talking into walkie-talkies and pressing a button that triggers a radio frequency.
Imagine that. That does remind me, actually, because we had our own ghost voice, ghost in the machine incident, if you recall, recording this.
Oh, we have them every week. Every time I edit this podcast, there are sounds in the background of the recording that we didn't make.
That's interesting. That's not what I was thinking of. I was thinking of the time where you isolated your audio stream, you played it back, and we could hear a voice, or what sounded like a voice but wasn't quite intelligible, in the background under your audio. And what the hell is that? Because it wasn't the same thing as you were saying. You eventually figured out that it coincided with my audio track, and your headphones were either electronically or physically interfering with your own mic from me talking, that it kind of made this distorted pattern. But for a while, we couldn't figure out what that was.
Every single episode does that.
Interesting.
Every single time. I could take a clip of that and play it back to people and say that I'm most haunted podcast.
Most haunted podcaster.
Yeah.
And producer of ectoplasm.
That's gone on my CV. We've said it so many times now.
But there's also, in the audio files, there's random noises that we don't recall making, which aren't anything to do with us, right?
Yeah. They're just crosstalk. They're just cross interference. That's all it is. You can basically match it up to sounds that we have recorded more or less every time.
That's kind of reassuring. However, talking about our own experiences with this, most people, or many people, have some kind of ghost story in their family or a personal experience. Have you got any personal experiences that you consider not fully explainable or otherwise spooky? Spooky.
Spooky. It's a bit spooky.
Spooky. Imagine getting haunted by a Scouse ghost. That would be the best.
I don't think it would. I want some dull Yorkshireman like that train guy. Sitting at the end of my bed screaming about Lee.
Sometimes I just want to play with your trains.
Sometimes I just want to play with your train. Train being penis.
Oh, is that what it was? Thanks for explaining for our hard of thinking listeners.
My dad has one. Although, if you believe anything coming out the mouth of that charlatan, you're probably already in trouble.
I love you, son. Press X.
Fake news!
Press X to doubt.
Good. Now, he has one about... So his mother grew up on a farm. They were a farming family. They had since moved away. Grandparents still lived on the farm. Came back to visit when he was a small child. That his grandmother had come and tucked him into bed like the previous couple of nights or whatever. That maybe they were there for a week. I'm probably mangling all the details of his story, but does it sound like I give a shit? So he'd gone up to bed. Grandmother came to tuck him in and close the door, say goodnight, that kind of thing. Next morning at breakfast, he asked her why she'd brought a candle up to bed to tuck him in. And she said, "Oh, I didn't actually come upstairs last night, Michael."
So what tucked him in? Oh, interesting. Yeah, I don't know. What's the explanation there? She did tuck him in and forget? Or he's a small kid and had a dream, or just dumb? Yeah.
Don't
know. I've got one. This happened to my mum and her mum. So when let's rephrase, my mum and my grandfather died, and they went on a family picnic. Apparently I was there, but I was too young to remember any of this. My mum and her mum both saw my granddad at the picnic. This was only maybe 2 weeks after his funeral, and he was just sort of sitting back, smoking his pipe, just as he always would have done in family holidays. This would have been in 1989 or 1990. And mum said at the time she saw him there and kind of didn't really think anything of it too much. It was just very natural. She knew he was dead, but it was still quite a serene, peaceful experience. And for me, the slightly spooky bit about this is when she spoke to her mum later that day. Her mum independently said, "Oh, Charlie was there at the picnic today." And so they both saw this apparition of Charlie independently. And my mum was a scientist and not prone to flights of fancy, and was generally a pretty hardened rationalist. But when you asked her about this, you would get a kind of fond, wistful look on her face and say, I don't really know how to explain this. And the explanation she volunteered was that it was a kind of a grief response to the loss of him, and it was an environment where you'd normally see him. And our brain is two hemispheres of grey meat with lightning trapped inside, so we perceive the world as a kind of hallucination anyway with electronic data, and we can see things that we create inside our brains. So I know that was her kind of explanation, and how her mum saw it as well, same mechanism and just a coincidence. But I think if you'd asked mum before that she would even ghost, she'd have said absolutely not. But then it happens to you, and it just makes you think a little bit. And I suppose it brings up the question of, if ghosts are real, is it something that happens inside our brains that we generate as a hallucination, creates an experience that feels very much like a genuine sensory ghost experience? Or would it be something that happens outside that we perceive?
I think there is such thing as the collective unconsciousness, that somehow we're maybe all plugged into a radio frequency on some very, very low level. And I wonder if there is that kind of psychic resonance between two people that knew a guy, and it would be perfectly natural to see him in that environment. As you say, you're not triggering each other, but somehow in your brain, he should be there in that picture, and maybe for a brief moment he is, whether that's something we've created or something that our hallucinated world around us has created. I don't know. That does actually remind me that I have a better one from a much more credible source in my paternal grandfather, who is a very rational, straightforward man, not grumpy. He just considers what's around him and what he says. If he says something, it's usually worth listening to, because he doesn't speak excessively like me, so God knows where I got this from. Not a man of few words, but when he talks, it's usually worth hearing. And he, as I said, skeptical, rational man, as was his brother-in-law, so his wife's brother, who has since died. But they were like really good friends before he passed. They had been on, countless holidays together as couples, caravanning south of France, lots of wine drinking and having a general good time. And they'd come into this subject at some point. What do you think about, after death? Not something that he would really even go into. He doesn't go to church. He doesn't have the same Christian beliefs that my granny now fervently holds on to. When she goes off to church, he stays at home and watches the news or something like that. But him and Alan, the guy that died, had said a few years ago, well, what do you think about this? He's like, well, they hadn't really come up. They didn't discuss it for long, but they had an agreement between them that, okay, well, when one of us goes first, we'll let the other one know if we can, if there is something in some way. Just a very informal conversation between two long-time friends. And he said it was some time, maybe 2 years after Alan had died, that he was walking down maybe just the high street or somewhere in a town that they had been together at some point, and he saw Alan pass him on the street. They made eye contact, almost sort of nodded to each other before he had the sudden realization, oh, Alan's been dead for 2 years. And looked back around, and he thought, that was his way of showing me, that was his way of telling me that there is something. And it was just as passing as the conversation might have been, just a knowing look between friends.
It's cool, isn't it? It just makes you wonder. I've got one more story to add, actually.
Hit me.
In the Year 7 residential week away trip, like the parents get lost trip that a lot of schools do, I wasn't allowed to go because it cost £100 for a week. And my parents were like, no, that's too expensive. You can fucking go to school or stay at home.
Stay home and hammer nails into a piece of wood.
Into your shins, because that's a good pastime. It was good enough for us when we were growing up.
Character building for a young boy.
Exactly. They're not from Yorkshire, but I feel like all parents use that voice. But anyway, so I wasn't there, but it was corroborated by the entire school year when they came back. Someone took a Ouija board with them, and on the second or third night they had it out, and they all gathered. I don't know, not all of them, there's like 100 of them. Some number of kids gathered around, 6 or 7 of them, and it did spell out a word. If you don't know, listeners, a Ouija board is a probably wooden board that has letters written on it, and you all put your hand over this marker, touch this marker, and it's meant to move around, and sometimes it spells things out, which is meant to be spirits from the other side communicating. And the thing that it spelt out, or one of the things it spelt out, was "the hell is open," which is a slightly odd turn of phrase. Curious. And the next morning, it turned out a kid on the trip had died in his sleep from a heart defect that no one knew about. And obviously the trip was ended early and everyone came back. And it was quite shocking. But yeah, that Ouija board incident is quite a curious... Maybe it means nothing. You probably wouldn't remember it if a kid hadn't died. But those two things happen and you can connect the dots and say, that's creepy.
If you wanted to look at it with a more skeptical view, you would say commonality isn't causality, right?
Yes.
The fact that these two things happened around the same time doesn't necessarily make them related.
And what does "the hell is open" mean anyway? Does that mean a kid's going to die?
That children in year 7 have a poor sense of grammar, perhaps? Maybe not where you went to school, posh boy.
Yeah, they should have done better than that, really. The hells are open, F.
They're correcting each other's grammar through the Ouija board.
Yeah, that would be more difficult.
Ouija board is actually a patented board game brand name for a speaking board. Ouijas have been registered by Hasbro or one of these Mattel companies.
It was invented by Glaswegians.
It's a Ouija board. It's for speaking to Glaswegians only.
Give us your fucking chips. Yeah. All right.
I love that. But yeah, they came from this spiritualism movement that we mentioned before, the speaking board, where you have a small marker that people collectively put their fingers on, a single finger or 2 fingers, and the planchette, as it's called, in theory, moves of its own accord. No one there is pushing it. Oh, I'm not touching it. I'm not doing this. It was you. It's a ghost. Again, maybe it's collective unconscious. Usually it's just someone doing it for lols. But yeah, Ouija as a brand name has been registered trademark for quite some time.
I didn't know that.
That's the fun origin stories. So, negative sides, people behaving like dickheads.
Yeah, disrespect.
Supporting a pseudoscience, disrespectful. Statistics by Jim is a website, and he says that the environments alone are conducive to bad data, if you want to look at this scientifically. So you're in somewhere that any bump or creak or noise you might interpret as otherworldly activity, but in a dilapidated, old, any kind of potentially haunted environment, there's probably just going to be perfectly natural and rational sounds that are going to be tilting the things in the favor of that.
Most of it's not falsifiable. When you've got a lack of evidence, that doesn't disprove anything. If you want to believe, it's just, spirits are quiet tonight.
And then the last one that I would say is the negative side, or the darker side, if there is. And this is particularly dark, I would say, there was an article from CNN in October of 2019 from another sensationalist TV maker
/ paranormal investigator.
Exactly, he is that. Maybe I can find his name. Maybe he doesn't want to be shouted out at that. David Schrader. So he does things like most haunted house in America, for example. But the thing he says that people should be more scared of on a paranormal investigation is other people. So that is where I mentioned that you might be like Dave, serial molester. Where you're going into a building that's already in a poor state, there's the environmental dangers. You might even just scratch yourself on a nail and give yourself tetanus, or fall through a rotten floorboard that's, a health hazard.
A haunted floorboard.
Yeah, that was a ghost did it. But it's more like, if you're somewhere that no one looks after, are there squatters? Are there junkies? Are there people who are mentally unstable that will attack you because they are unhinged? Or if it's in someone's private residence, maybe you're lucky enough to be called out to someone's house as a ghost hunter or an investigator. You don't know what you're walking into in terms of those people's mental state or their family environments. Or they close the door, you're trapped in an environment that you haven't vetted or have control over.
And you might be at the wrong end of a very real, non-spiritual shotgun or anything.
The dangers of other people are probably more real than the dangers of paranormal activity.
As we keep saying, people being people.
And maybe before we move on to closing thoughts, this is usually your first thought, but we've rolled this towards the end of our time.
Is it sexual? Is it sexy? Well, I'm going to say absolutely not on this one. I saw no hint of sexuality involved in this at all. You only have to look at the status of the clickbait YouTubers to know that there's nothing sexual happening there.
No one's getting turned on by you, Cody.
Or Captain Broccoli, no.
I think exactly that. The inherent hunting part of ghost hunting, no. I mean, there's a few arguments to be made that people get not turned on by danger, but are more likely to huddle close together from a perceived threat. But ghost hunting as an activity, not sexual. Although I did come across some fun little sexual anecdotes from the world of ghost hunting.
Show me where the ghost touched you.
There's not an immediate wealth of material.
The ghost called Dave that you mentioned.
Yeah. God, Dave's getting absolutely railed on today.
That's how he likes it. That's why he does this.
I think there's a whole separate side to it. So there's actually words for it: spectrophilia and phasmophilia.
Oh my lord!
It's the sexual attraction to ghosts.
Fucking hell, there's a fetish.
But that's for another time, perhaps. That's not for today. That's not necessarily connected.
Maybe we can cover that on the 2nd of Never.
Maybe we could. Okay, here's a good one. So this is from Yorkshire Live on MSN.com.
Oh, yeah. Give me those sweet Yorkshire tones.
And this is from around 9 months ago. It was December 2024 that I found. And this was about a couple who are into paranormal and do ghost hunting together and actually run a haunted exhibit of haunted items that they've collected.
Do they?
Apparently so. But the title is Ghost Asked My Girlfriend for Totally Inappropriate Sex While on a Hunt.
That's a algorithmically generated title if ever there was one. Hits all the major points.
Yeah, it does. It ticks all the boxes. These two claimed that they heard a voice in a haunted town hall that they were investigating or had been asked to investigate. And apparently when they both heard this menacing sounding voice, it said, "Suck my dick."
That was probably just him.
And no, because their camera, this one of these stickman ones that reflects light images and does some 3D projecting or something, apparently it also detected some kind of stick figure miming sexual acts at this lady.
Wow.
I love it.
It was Dave, 100%.
It's just this guy doing shadow thrusts behind his girlfriend, yeah. Gonna show you the ectoplasm later.
Yeah, baby.
And of course, the reputable source that is Quora, when you ask it questions and people respond with all their nonsense.
I hate Quora.
I love that it's taken over from Yahoo Answers as just
a cesspit of half-baked, extremely confident answers.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So Jermaine Carr on Quora claims that something is touching him or rubbing him through his sheets and through his jeans at night. Apparently this entity is even dripping liquid onto him.
This is just kink fulfillment.
It was so good. But he's like, I'm a skeptical man, I'm rational. I didn't believe it. I thought maybe there was a breeze or something in my room that was moving my sheet. But no, he's convinced that there's something dripping liquid onto his penis and that he now actually quite looks forward to it.
That's a wet dream, mate. That's what that is.
I fucking love it.
Someone should tell them about those.
Yeah, that's all I got is people claiming to be touched by a ghost.
I think that covers it for Dark Side pretty much. It's not a huge amount of it. It's just scamming. As always, people being people. But you can only be scammed if you let yourself be scammed.
As I said, approach everything with a healthy degree of skepticism. Even things that you read online that are in no way related to ghost hunting. I think that's probably the darkest, maybe the saddest part of it is people being exploited. If you have a genuine belief that someone is going to try and trick you with these because they can make money out of you time and time again. Always has been, always will be. But
that's people.
If I had to move on to my final thoughts on that slightly morose note.
And would you, I guess this is a question already answered, but is this something you'd consider doing for fun?
Hell yeah. Yeah. I think that if anyone leaves 25 people comment on any of this material, that we should be forced to go and do one ourselves, anywhere. We should arrange to do one between us. We could become ghost facers.
Ghost facers! I'm so down. I would definitely do this. I'm actually quite looking forward to it. There's a game called Phasmophobia, which kind of hits all of the thrill points of ghost hunting in a game environment. Have you ever played it?
No.
It's not a perfect game, but it does get that spookiness quite right. And I'd totally be up for going out and scaring myself with some people in a place. And I think the main thing I've learned from this is you can enjoy ghost hunting without actually believing in ghosts and not expecting to find any. It's just kind of a bit of cognitive dissonance that you can enjoy. Like, I know I don't really believe in this, but it's nonetheless fun to take yourself into a spooky environment and just have a little bit of role play or wish fulfillment.
Get a bit of a jump scare.
Yeah.
Why not? If you can suspend your disbelief long enough, you can probably have fun with it, I reckon.
Mm-hmm.
My thoughts would be that ultimately, I think it can be a harmless and fun group activity. I wouldn't recommend going out to disreputable places on your own, as long as you approach it lawfully and cautiously and with respect to other people around you, dead or living, because I definitely don't think you should be going into a cemetery at night, touching anything, doing anything, or screaming into the darkness, "Show yourselves! Come at me, bro!" This is not cool. But I think people end up sort of crafting shared experiences when they do things like this, either convincing themselves that they experience something because of the environment that you're in, or you can convince yourself that it was all just a waste of time, that the atmosphere and the location and the group dynamic, you can potentially take away a fun and thrilling little story that would be a conversation piece, at least, surely.
I think it makes a lot of sense as a shared activity, especially if you're all in a similar kind of mindset about it and you found a good place to go do it.
Yeah, we'll do it. That's it. Come on, listeners. Make Joe do it. A ghost hunt. 25 comments is all I need to drag him somewhere.
Don't threaten me with a good time.
It's a promise. Because I'll be there.
I'll buy a smother box for the occasion.
I'll show up in my trench coat with my smudging equipment and rectum full of crystals.
Can't be too safe.
That's all I've got to say on the topic of ghost hunting. I think we've fairly roundedly covered that out.
I think so.
Yeah.
There's one last quote which I found from a scientific paper that was studying believers in the paranormal, and it said, "Being poor at deductive reasoning may have a causal role in the development of unusual beliefs." To conclude, respondents who believe strongly in the paranormal were found to score higher on a measure of delusional ideation, make more errors on a deductive reasoning task than those with less strongly held beliefs about the paranormal. This was not the case, however, on statements that were congruent with their beliefs. What that's saying is you can be intelligent, but this is something people are prone to, especially people that believe in fringe stuff, is they can correctly follow a deductive chain of reasoning if the conclusion agrees with their beliefs. If the deductive chain of reasoning disagrees with their beliefs, then suddenly they forget how to do proper reasoning and they go rogue so that their belief system remains unchallenged.
I think that's relevant to anything that people would consider themselves researching or proving, that you've always run the risk of leaving out evidence that doesn't fit with the conclusion that you've already formed.
Confirmation bias, putting the cart before the horse. That's something we should all be. I'd say if there's any other dark side I'd like to mention, it's probably that you should form your beliefs from the evidence you find and not form the evidence from the beliefs you have.
Soundly put. Very rational. Very good.
Thank you. Sweet. Well, I think that's everything I've got to say about this. This was a great time researching it.
It was fun. I had a lot of fun reading it, and I'm probably going to continue reading and screaming about it into the depths of night in my own home.
In the most haunted flat in Brno.
So that's it for today on the Sub-Subculture Podcast. You can now follow us on several social bullshits. You can find us on Twitter/X, and we're at Sub-Subcultpod. Or you can now get us on Reddit on r/Sub-Subculture Podcast. You can leave us a comment or your own suggestion for future topics, or you can just force Joe to do a ghost hunt, which I'm very, very up for. Please do it. Go and do it right now. Stop listening to us and go and tell him what he needs to do.
You can also leave us comments, just abuse. We're here for that. Fully expect some.
Yeah, we expect it. We crave it. And you can check out all our previous episodes and our special side quests, our short form episodes, on your favorite place for podcasts, whether that's Apple, Amazon Music, Spotify, or any other reputable distribution source for podcasts.
And give us suggestions on what you'd like us to cover next.
Yep. Do or don't. Keep them to your fucking self. That's fine.
It's a long list of homework you've got, listener. Now, fuck off and do it.
Until next time, thank you for joining us on the Sub-Subculture Podcast.
If you enjoyed today's episode, why not check out some other alternative content from some of our friends?
Welcome to the That's Effin' Weird podcast, where we cover anything weird.
A month later, her foot was found in a retention pond 150 miles away.
Unsettling.
He reinstates a bounty system that was used during the French and Indian War, which is a scalp bounty. So basically, you get paid $134 if you bring back an enemy Native American scalp.
Informative.
The costume that they used for that Bigfoot episode was the same costume in Harry and the Hendersons.
Oh, wow.
Really?
And sometimes funny.
Digging their claws into me would be something that would, I don't know if I could, I think it would hurt. I mean, obviously it would hurt, but I don't know.
This is for survival, though. You got time to think about the pain afterward.
True.
I mean, you're fighting for your life here. Like, yeah, it hurts when I'm just, trying to eat my breakfast and the cat scratches me.
If there's anything you guys want us to cover, be sure to leave us a comment or hit us up in our Discord. But just remember, we don't want stuff that's normal. We want stuff that's effing weird.